During the millionaire's wedding, a mother of triplets burst into the church and took the microphone. What she said left all the guests horrified. Madison climbed the stairs of the mansion with heavy steps, feeling a growing anguish. Quentin had called her to his room, but lately, he had been acting strange, cold, almost as if he was waiting for the right moment to push her away for good. She had worked in that house for years, but the relationship they kept secret now seemed distant. The air around was heavy, laden with something she couldn't quite define. Stopping in front of the door, Madison hesitated. She always knocked twice, as if it were a ritual that connected them in some way. But that night, even the simple gesture seemed fraught with uncertainty. What's happening to him? Why is he so distant? She thought, trying to stay calm. Finally, she knocked and heard his voice. Cold, distant. "Come in." Madison opened the door and entered the room. Quentin was standing with his back to her, looking out the window at the vast gardens of the mansion. His posture was tense, and the heavy silence between them almost suffocated her. The room, always familiar, now seemed strange, as if she no longer belonged in that space. "Quentin, is everything okay?" Madison asked, her voice hesitant. She tried to approach, but there was something in the air, an invisible barrier that prevented her from feeling at ease. Quentin remained with his back turned, his voice emotionless when he replied, "We need to talk." Those words cut like a knife. Madison felt the ground tremble beneath her feet, but she tried to keep her composure. "Talk?" His tone was so cold that her heart began to beat erratically. "About what? You've been so distant. Did I do something wrong?" Quentin finally turned around, but the look he cast upon her was not like before. There was no affection, no compassion. His eyes were empty, indifferent. He took a step forward, approaching the table where a glass of water was forgotten, but he didn't seem to notice. "Madison, this is enough," he said without beating around the bush. "I can't continue with this." His words fell upon her like an avalanche. "Enough?" Madison's mind was spinning. She felt panic rising in her throat, but she needed to understand. "What do you mean, Quentin? What's going on? You don't want to see me anymore?" she asked nervously. Quentin ran his hand over his face, clearly irritated. "This should never have happened. I got involved with you out of loneliness, but you're poor, Madison. You should never have thought you'd have anything serious with me," he said, in a tone as cold and cutting as a blade. Madison was paralyzed. The impact of his words was so great that she felt her legs weaken. "Poor?" She could barely believe what she was hearing. "Is that what you think of me? That I'm just a distraction for you?" Madison asked, unable to truly believe what he was saying. Quentin shook his head impatiently, as if what he was saying was the most obvious thing in the world. "Madison, look at yourself. Look at me." He gestured towards the luxurious room around them. "We come from different worlds. What did you expect? That I'd give up everything for a maid? Be realistic." The cruelty in his words was unbearable. Madison felt the tears burn in her eyes, but she struggled to keep them at bay. "How can he be so cruel? How can he talk about me like that?" she thought, feeling her heart break. You never said this before," she replied, her voice trembling. "You always made me feel like there was something more between us." Quentin gave a short, humorless laugh as he walked towards the door. "Something more? Madison, I was just passing the time. I never promised anything. You deluded yourself," he said without any shame or remorse in his words. Madison was left speechless, shocked by his coldness. Every word from Quentin crushed her more and more, destroying any hope she still had that the relationship meant something to him. "So you used me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Used? Don't be dramatic," Quentin replied impassively. "You knew from the start that this wouldn't last. People like you don't belong in my world. I need someone at my level, not a woman who can barely support herself." He cut her off. Madison felt her entire body tremble with indignation and pain. How can he be so cruel? The man with whom she had shared such intimate moments, whom she thought respected her, was treating her like she was nothing. "So you think you can treat me like this just because I'm poor?" she said, her voice now tinged with anger and hurt. "You made me believe that," she began to speak, but Quentin interrupted her with an impatient gesture. "Enough, Madison. I've said what I needed to. This is over. And also, I want you to leave the mansion tomorrow. You're fired." Madison nearly lost her breath. Not only was he ending things with her, but he was also firing her. He was kicking her out of his life and her job, at the same time, as if she were disposable, worthless. She felt the world spin around her, but she forced herself to keep her head held high. "You can't treat me like this, Quentin," she said, tears finally rolling down her face. "I'm not just a maid, I'm a person, and you deceived me. You made me believe I meant something," she said, causing Quentin to approach, looking directly into her eyes with a pitiless expression. "You can think whatever you want, but the truth is you were never more than a convenient distraction, and now it's over. Accept it and leave. Don't come back to my house." Madison couldn't believe what she was hearing. The coldness, the cruelty, the contempt. It was as if Quentin had turned into another person. She couldn't bear it anymore. Without saying another word, she turned and left the room, the pain in her chest almost unbearable. The door closed with a definitive sound, and Madison, on the other side, felt that everything she had was ripped away from her in a matter of minutes. She didn't know where to go, what to do, but she knew that Quentin didn't care. She was to him just a memory that would be easily forgotten. Madison walked with difficulty down the wide corridor of the mansion, each step seeming to weigh tons. Her shoulders were hunched, not by the weight of her tattered backpack, but by the invisible burden that Quentin had placed on her with his cruel words. Her mind spun incessantly, reliving every phrase, every cold look. The relationship she believed held some meaning had been reduced to nothing, and now she was nothing more than an unemployed, directionless maid. "I was just a distraction, just a passing amusement," she thought, her chest tightening. Everything they had lived, every moment they had secretly shared, now seemed like a cruel illusion. Quentin saw in her nothing more than a poor, unimportant woman. Madison wondered how she had been so blind. How could I have let myself be so deceived? She reached the small room she occupied in the service area of the mansion, where she kept her belongings. The walls, once familiar, now seemed suffocating, as if everything there was a reminder of her insignificant place in Quentin's life. She sat on the bed for a moment, unable to hold back the weight of the tears that began to flow. "I can't believe it all ended like this. He can't cast me aside like I was nothing," she murmured to herself as she put her few belongings in her backpack. Every movement seemed mechanically painful. There weren't many possessions, just the bare necessities for someone who lived to work and survive. When she stood up and looked at that small space for the last time, Madison felt something inside her break completely. Everything she had been ripped away in a matter of minutes. The way Quentin had scorned her, calling her poor as if her life held no value. It was something she would never forget. But at the same time, she didn't want to leave without at least trying to understand why. "I need to get back up. I can't let him finish me," she thought determinedly, even though she knew he had already made it clear that he no longer wanted her. Something inside her cried out for a better explanation, something beyond those cruel words. With her backpack on, she went back up the stairs, each step a monumental effort. Her thoughts were jumbled, her mind unable to process what would happen after she walked out that door. She stopped in front of Quentin's office door, hesitating for a second before knocking. Silence. She knocked again, louder this time, and then heard footsteps behind the door. But when the door opened, it wasn't Quentin who appeared. One of the other mansion employees was there, looking at her with an expression that was a mixture of pity and discomfort. "Mr. Quentin asked not to be disturbed," he said firmly, but with a look that made it clear he knew what had happened. Madison tried to argue, but the man shook his head, blocking the entrance. He said he's made his decision. There's no point in insisting. She felt a lump form in her throat but knew it was no use to insist. He doesn't even want to hear me. Not a word. It was as if she had already been erased from his life, as if everything they had shared was irrelevant. With no other options, Madison descended the stairs for the last time, fighting back the tears that insisted on falling. She passed through the mansion's hall, her eyes fixed on the floor as her mind was invaded by memories. All the moments they had shared, the laughter, the secret touches, now seemed nothing more than naive fantasies. I never meant anything to him. When she reached the mansion's gate, she stopped to breathe. The air seemed heavier than ever, as if the environment around her knew what had just happened. It was then that she heard in the distance the voices of some of the mansion's maids chatting among themselves near the garden. They were laughing, unaware that Madison was nearby. "Did you hear?" one of them said, lowering her voice but with undisguised excitement. "It seems Mr. Quentin is getting married in a few months to some Claire, heir to that huge fortune." Madison froze. Getting married? The idea hit her with the force of a blow. She felt the air leave her, and her feet seemed rooted to the ground. Married to someone else? The words echoed in her mind, each more painful than the last. "Yeah, I heard her family owns several companies. Perfect for him. Rich, beautiful, different from certain affairs he's had around here," the other woman laughed, and Madison felt her stomach churn. The words seemed like a poison slowly seeping in, leaving her weaker with every second. She stood there frozen, listening to the two of them laugh and comment on the great future Quentin would have with Claire, the woman who clearly had everything he needed. "He had it all planned out while I believed it meant something." The dizziness began to overwhelm her. Madison took a few steps forward, trying to reach the gate, but her legs faltered. The world around her began to spin, the maids' voices growing more and more distant. Her heart raced, her breathing shallow, the pressure in her chest increased with every second. I can't take this," was her last thought before her vision faded. Madison's body gave in and she collapsed to the ground unconscious, feeling only the cold of the sidewalk and the sharp pain she carried in her heart. Hours later, Madison woke up under an intense light that burned her closed eyelids, smelling the strong scent of disinfectant. Gradually, the voices around her became clearer, and she realized she was lying in a hospital bed. Her senses were confused, and a slight dizziness still bothered her. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking several times until the image of a doctor standing beside the bed came into focus. "You're awake, finally," said the doctor with a serious expression while making some notes on the clipboard. "We were worried. You fainted and were brought here by someone passing by on the street who saw you fall." Madison tried to sit up, but her head throbbed with a dull ache. Her mind was foggy, and she could barely remember what had happened. Quentin, the cruel words, the weight of everything crashing down on her, and then the blackout. How could my life come to this? How does everything seem to be crumbling so quickly? She thought, trying to put her thoughts in order. "You suffered a collapse," the doctor continued, noting the confusion in Madison's gaze. "Probably the result of the physical and emotional stress you've been enduring. And there's one more thing you need to know," the doctor said with a calm voice but laden with a gravity that made her feel a chill down her spine. Madison looked at him awaiting the next words, her heart racing in anticipation. One more thing? What could be worse than all of this? She thought anxiously. "You're pregnant," he said, pausing for the words to sink in. "Pregnant with triplets. Congratulations. We had to perform an examination to make sure everything was okay when you were brought to the hospital," the doctor said, making Madison feel the world spin again, but in a different way. Those words hit like a blow, and the air seemed to fail her for a second. Pregnant with triplets? The shock took over her body, and she looked at the doctor as if he had just said something impossible. "This can't be happening. This can't be true," said Madison, her voice coming out weaker than she intended. "Triplets? How can that be? I didn't even know." She lay back down on the bed, as if her body had given up fighting against the weight of that new reality. "It's true," the doctor confirmed, looking at her with compassion. "The tests confirm it, but your pregnancy is high risk, especially considering the conditions you're in. You'll need constant care and medical monitoring." Madison's mind was a mess. Quentin, the firing, the contempt, the fact that she had been thrown away as if she were nothing, and now this. She was pregnant with 3 children. How am I going to deal with this? How will I survive? I'm alone. The thought weighed on her chest like an anchor, sinking her further into despair. "You'll need rest, a lot of medical attention," the doctor continued, his voice sounding distant as she processed everything. "Your health and that of the babies depends on proper care, and being triplets, the risk is even greater," the doctor carefully explained. Madison squeezed her eyes shut, fighting to hold back tears. All she could think about was how Quentin had despised her, and how now, ironically, she was carrying his children. "He'll never know. He can't know," she thought, anger and despair mixing into a silent pain. "He would never care." "I don't know what to do," Madison whispered, unable to contain the confusion in her voice. "I have no one. I have no way to pay for this care. I got fired," she said, her voice choked with nervousness. The doctor paused, clearly not knowing what to say to comfort her. He had heard many stories of people in desperate situations, but Madison's case was particularly cruel. "You'll need support. This isn't something you can face alone," he said in an attempt to soften the harshness of the truth, but Madison knew she was alone. "There's no one who's going to help me," she thought, the despair growing inside her. Quentin was out of the question, and she had no family to turn to. The feeling of abandonment was almost suffocating. Her eyes wandered around the hospital room, but she couldn't focus on anything. "What am I going to do with 3 children? I have no home, no job, nothing left. I just need to get out of here," said Madison suddenly, getting up from the bed, her body still weak. The doctor watched her with concern. "I can't stay here. I have no way to pay for this," she said. "Wait. If you leave now without proper care, you risk harming the pregnancy. It's dangerous, Madison." The doctor tried to intervene, but she was already determined. But nothing he said would change what she already knew. Madison had no choice. She couldn't pay for the care, she couldn't rely on anyone, and above all, she couldn't afford to stand still. "If I don't do anything, who's going to take care of these babies? I'm alone. I have to find a way to give a decent life to my children," she thought, feeling the panic build up. Without saying anything else, she put on her clothes, ignoring the doctor's worried look. She felt her legs trembling but gathered strength to walk towards the exit. Each step was a reminder of the weight she now carried. Not just a shattered life, but 3 lives growing inside her. 3 children. 3 lives now depend on me. I need to sort out my life. I need to give a future to my children, she thought nervously. When she reached the hospital door, the cold night wind hit her face, bringing her back to reality with cruel intensity. She stopped for a moment, looking around, as if seeking some answer in the emptiness of the deserted street. And now, where do I go? The question echoed in her mind, but there was no answer. With a trembling hand, she clutched the strap of her backpack, which now seemed heavier than ever. The feeling of being lost and hopeless began to take over her. The future looked bleak, and for the first time in her life, Madison really didn't know what to do next. No money, no job, and 3 children on the way. How will she survive? Madison walked the deserted streets, the cold wind cutting her face and making her skin prickle. The feeling of abandonment and helplessness was overwhelming. She clutched the backpack against her body, trying to cling to the only thing that seemed concrete at that moment. Her mind was clouded with unanswered questions and a growing fear. How will I support these babies alone? How will I survive? The only certainty she had was that she couldn't go back to Quentin, not after the contempt he had shown her. 6 months later, and the reality of the pregnancy was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Madison's belly was beginning to visibly grow, and with it came the difficulties. With no money and no steady job, she made do as best she could. She picked up temporary jobs wherever she could find them, cleaning houses, doing other people's laundry, or even selling a few small belongings to get some cash. But it was barely enough to sustain herself, let alone think about the babies that were to come. "What else can I do?" Madison mumbled to herself as she scrubbed the floor of a modest house where she had landed a one-day cleaning job. The pain in her back was constant, and the physical exertion was starting to take its toll. "Every day is getting harder. How will I keep going like this?" She straightened up for a moment, taking a deep breath to ease the pressure she felt on her belly. Her triplets were moving restlessly, as if sensing the tension in her body. Madison continued her work day after day, clinging to the hope that every penny would help her prepare something for her children. But as the pregnancy progressed, her body began to show signs of exhaustion. Weakness set in more frequently, and sometimes dizziness caught her by surprise. Still, she had no choice but to keep going. I have to hold on for them. But the doubt still lingered in her mind, even as she tried to convince herself that she could endure more. At the end of a particularly tiring day, she sat down on a small chair in the corner of the cramped room she was renting. It was all she could afford with the little she had saved, and the conditions were far from ideal. The summer heat made the environment suffocating, and Madison fanned herself with an old magazine, trying to cool off as she felt her body heavy and tired. Will I be able to give them the bare minimum? How will I take care of 3 children alone? She thought about Quentin sometimes, but her wounded pride prevented her from even considering asking for his help. He abandoned me. He discarded me without a second thought. I'm not going to beg for anything. His words calling her poor and insignificant still echoed in her head. The contempt in his eyes prevented her from seeking any kind of support. She couldn't go back. She didn't want to depend on someone who had humiliated her. As the days went by, the situation worsened. The cleaning work, which she had previously been able to do with some effort, became almost unbearable. The weight of the triplets pressed on her spine. The nausea returned with force, and the weakness seemed more and more constant. I don't know how much longer I can take this, she thought, as she finished another day of exhausting work, her hands trembling with fatigue. Every step she took seemed like a superhuman effort. That night, after another day of work, Madison lay down in bed, but the discomfort prevented her from sleeping. She tossed and turned, trying to find a position that would relieve the pressure on her back and the constant pain in her swollen feet. Everything is getting harder, but I have to keep going. Her thoughts swirled and despair seemed to suffocate her. How will I get enough to give them what they need? I have nothing. The heat of the small house and the lack of air made her get up in the middle of the night. She walked to the window, her body trembling, feeling weaker and weaker. The feeling of helplessness and loneliness was overwhelming as she looked out at the dark, deserted street. A sharp pain made her stop suddenly, a strong pressure in the lower abdomen. No! What is this? The pain was so intense that her legs gave way, and Madison had to hold on to the wall to keep from falling. I can't be going into labor now, it's too early, she gasped, trying to breathe deeply to control the pain, but the pressure kept building stronger and stronger. Her body was fighting against itself, and she knew something was very wrong. Is this the end? Is something wrong with the babies? Anxiety began to mingle with panic. Madison tried to reach for her phone on the bedside table, but the pain caused her to fall to her knees on the floor, unable to move. I need help. I need to get to the hospital, she thought, her heart racing. Her hands were trembling as she grabbed her phone and tried to dial the emergency service. The pain was excruciating, and her body seemed to be collapsing. The following minutes became a blur of pain, fear, and despair. Madison could barely think of anything else besides the pain that seemed to be tearing her body apart from the inside. I can't lose these babies. Not now, she thought, fighting back the tears streaming down her face as she called for an ambulance. After what seemed like an eternity, the ambulance arrived and she was placed on a stretcher. The paramedics' voices were muffled by the sound of her labored breathing. Breathe deeply. We'll get you to the hospital as quickly as possible. The words were a distant echo, but Madison fought to stay conscious. She knew every second counted. They need me. I need to survive for them. As the ambulance raced through the streets, Madison's face was covered in sweat, and her mind drifted between reality and the crushing fear. Will I lose my babies? What if I can't hold on? She squeezed her eyes shut, feeling the pain intensify. What had once been a struggle against poverty and abandonment now became a fight for her children's lives. The ambulance arrived at the hospital at high speed, its lights blinking in a blur of white and red that Madison could barely see. Her body was gripped by a sharp pain, each contraction a wave of panic that swept through her like an uncontrollable storm. The paramedics rushed her inside, racing against time. She felt on the verge of collapse, her frail, trembling body trying to cope with the premature labor that had arrived far too soon. Madison tried to focus on the faces of the doctors around her, but the bright lights and the confusion of voices made everything hazy. "You need to stay calm," a nurse said, holding Madison's hand. "We're doing everything we can, but the babies are coming very early." Her tone, though calm, carried evident concern. "Please save my children," Madison murmured, almost out of strength. The desperation overwhelmed her completely. "They need to survive. I can't lose them now." The lead doctor, his expression grave, looked at Madison as he checked her vital signs. "Your babies are extremely premature, and that means there will be many risks. We need to start the procedure now, or we could lose all of them." His words were direct, leaving no room for illusion. Madison felt the ground crumbling beneath her feet. She was alone, about to give birth to 3 children, all with uncertain chances of survival. The physical and emotional pain brought her to the brink of collapse, but she knew she had no choice but to fight for them. "I would give my life for them if need be." The thought echoed in her mind as the chaos around her took over. The doctors prepared her for the emergency surgery. The surroundings seemed distant, as if she were watching everything from outside her own body. The heart monitor emitted a steady beep, but each time she heard it, she felt as though she was drifting further from reality. Will I be able to see them grow up? Will I even get to see them? I need a miracle. I need them to be born safely. God, please help me, help my children. They need me. Please let me survive to care for them and love them, she thought in a silent prayer, as another wave of pain ripped through her abdomen. The medical team worked swiftly and precisely, but the atmosphere in the room was heavy. There was urgency in their movements, and Madison could sense the tension on everyone's faces around her. "The contractions are coming relentlessly, far too soon," one of the doctors said to another. "We need incubators ready for all 3. Every minute counts." "I can't lose them," Madison whispered, feeling a new wave of despair wash over her. The room was spinning, and her breathing grew increasingly difficult. She felt she was at the limit of her strength, but still, the will to fight for her children kept her conscious. "I promised myself I would protect them, and I will. I will make it. We will," she thought, determined. The doctor looked at Madison once more. "We'll do everything we can, but there are serious risks. They're far too small, too fragile. The chances of survival are low." He moved closer to the operating table, preparing to begin the premature delivery. Madison felt tears slide down her face. It was in their hands now, but more than that, in the hands of a fate she couldn't control. "Please, God, let me save them. I couldn't bear to live without them." Fear consumed her thoughts, and the feeling of helplessness overwhelmed her. The labor was long and exhausting. Madison could no longer distinguish time. Her thoughts fragmented between the physical pain and the fear of losing her children. The tense silence in the room was broken only by the sound of the machines and the doctor's brief commands. "Come on. We need to get them out now. I need you all to pay attention. This moment is crucial, and the lives of 3 children and 1 woman are at risk. We will do everything we can for them, but the odds are against us." The lead doctor's voice echoed through the room. Seconds later, the first baby was born, but the silence in the room was unsettling. There was no cry that Madison so longed for. Instead, the newborn was immediately taken to a team of specialists trying to stabilize him. Madison, exhausted, tried to lift her head, seeking to see her son, but the doctor gently held her back. "Stay calm. We're taking care of them. You need to focus." But how can I be calm? The thought was almost impossible. She was giving birth to 3 children, and the first one wasn't crying. "Please tell me they'll be okay," she pleaded, her voice weak. "The second one is coming," said the doctor, not taking his eyes off the procedure. Just like the first, the second baby was born in silence, being immediately taken away. Madison felt her heart tighten. Why aren't they crying? What's happening? "Please, I need my children. They have to survive, my God." she thought in panic. The tension in the room was palpable. She knew the situation was critical, but the absolute silence was unbearable. "They're in a very fragile state," said a nurse by her side, her voice full of empathy. "We're doing what we can." And then the third baby was born shortly after, and the story repeated itself. No cry, no comforting sound. They were all quickly taken to the neonatal unit. "My children, my 3 children." Madison repeated this in her mind, as if she could cling to that idea to keep from collapsing. When the doctor finally approached, Madison was already almost unconscious from exhaustion. "Your babies were born, but they're all in critical condition," he said, his expression serious. "They're receiving intensive care, but the next few hours will be decisive. We don't know if they'll survive." Madison's world collapsed at that moment. The idea of losing her children, those for whom she had fought so hard, made her feel as if her own life was slipping from her grasp. "Please take care of them. I'd do anything," she pleaded, her last words before losing consciousness. Madison awoke in a cold, silent room, the strong smell of disinfectant and the low hum of hospital machines bringing her back to reality. She felt her body heavy, the physical and emotional exhaustion like a burden that seemed impossible to bear. When her eyes opened fully, the first thing that came to her mind was the babies. "My children, are they still alive? They have to be okay. If I had worked less, if I had managed at least to support us without having to work so much." "No, I can't think like that," she thought. But the overwhelming fear consumed her, and with effort, she tried to sit up in bed. Madison tried to get out of bed when a nurse who was beside her noticed she had awakened and approached with a gentle but concerned look. "You've had quite a scare," said the nurse, touching her arm carefully. "There, it's time to rest, but I know you want news about the babies." Madison nodded weakly, her heart racing. "I need to see them. Are they okay? Will they survive?" The urgency in her voice was palpable, and the idea of not knowing what was happening with her children left her on the verge of despair. "It's too early to say," the nurse replied in a careful tone. "They're in the neonatal ICU and the doctors are doing their best, but their condition is critical. The only thing we can do now is wait and pray," said the nurse, trying to sound comforting. However, those words pierced Madison like a knife. Wait and pray. That was all she had left, but it seemed so little in the face of the gravity of the situation. She couldn't just lie there motionless. "I want to see them. I need to be there," she said, her voice trembling but determined. With the nurse's help, Madison managed to get up, still feeling her body weak after giving birth. Every step to the ICU seemed an enormous challenge, but nothing could stop her from reaching her children. "They need me. I can't leave them alone. I have to be with them. They need to know I'm here, that I'll fight for them and stay here until they get better," she said. When she finally arrived at the ICU, Madison's heart tightened as she saw the tiny bodies of her triplets inside the incubators. They were surrounded by tubes, connected to machines monitoring their fragile vital signs. The silence was only broken by the constant sound of the equipment, and the sight of the babies made her catch her breath. She approached the glass window separating the ICU from the hallway, her eyes fixed on the children who could barely move. "They're so small. How will they survive like this?" she thought, tears forming in her eyes. One of the doctors entered the room and began examining the babies, but the expressions on his face brought no comfort. "I would do anything to see them well," Madison mumbled to herself, her eyes filled with a mix of despair and hope. If only I could do more. The weight of responsibility was overwhelming. She was alone, with no money, no support, and her children were fighting for their lives. The days turned into a cycle of endless waiting. Madison barely ate or slept, sitting in the chair in the ICU hallway, her eyes always on her children. "They need to feel that I'm here, that I won't give up on them," she thought every day, feeling the sense of helplessness gnawing away at her inside. But giving up was not an option. With the passing of days, Madison began to seek a way to support herself while spending time at the hospital. Her savings had already run out, and the idea of leaving the hospital didn't even cross her mind. so she offered to work as a janitor at the hospital, doing small jobs while waiting for news about her children. "If I don't work, I won't be able to pay the bills. They need to have everything. I won't let them lack anything, even if I have to work day and night until they leave this hospital," Madison thought as she cleaned the floor of the corridors. Physical and emotional fatigue accompanied her with every move, but she continued determined to fight for every penny. "It's all I can do for them now." Even weak, she felt she needed to maintain some form of control over the situation. The work was not easy. The pregnancy and recent childbirth had left Madison even more debilitated, but she continued cleaning the hospital with the same care she had always dedicated to everything she did. "I need to stay strong," she thought, trying to ignore the back pain and fatigue that seemed to increase with each passing day. "I need to do this for them." Between the janitorial hours and the waiting moments in front of the ICU, Madison prayed silently for her children's recovery. Every time a doctor or nurse entered the ICU, her heart leapt desperately hoping for good news. But until then, everything was uncertain. "It's still too early to say if they will survive," the doctor said once again, and the words echoed in her mind constantly. On a particularly difficult night, when Madison finally allowed herself to close her eyes for a few minutes in the hospital corridor, one of the nurses woke her urgently. "Madison," said the woman with a worried expression, "one of your babies has worsened. He is having severe respiratory complications, and the doctors will need to perform emergency surgery," she said, her voice sounding rushed due to the urgency of the situation. Madison's heart stopped for a second. Panic overtook her completely, and she stood up immediately despite the weakness in her body. "Surgery? Why my baby? How did this happen? Is there no way to care for him without surgery?" she asked with a trembling voice. Her hands were cold with sweat as she tried to process the information. "The doctors are preparing now," said the nurse, placing a gentle hand on Madison's shoulder. "We'll do everything possible, but it's a very delicate situation." Madison felt the world around her crumble again. "I can't lose any of them. Not now," she thought. Struggling against the despair that threatened to dominate her, she pressed her lips tightly, trying not to let the tears escape as she watched the medical team preparing for surgery. Minutes later, Madison sat in the small chair in the hospital corridor, her eyes fixed on the door to the operating room. Her thoughts were chaotic, and the fear of losing the baby took over every cell of her body. The environment around her seemed distant, as if the sound of people, the noise of machines, and the rapid footsteps of doctors were part of another world. All that mattered now was the tiny being fighting for life in that room. "Please, let him survive. I can't lose any of them," she thought, her heart tight with anguish as she waited for news. Madison's mind wavered between hope and despair. Time seemed to drag on. Each minute that passed made her more anxious, and emotional exhaustion weighed upon her like a cloud. "They promised me they would do their best, but will their best be enough?" She clasped her hands in her lap in a futile attempt to calm herself. Madison knew she needed to distract herself. She could no longer bear the agonizing weight. Every catastrophic scenario played through her worried mother's mind, so she got up and walked down the hospital corridor. It was then, in the middle of the hallway, that she saw an elderly woman, her face marked by time, walking slowly, almost lost. The woman seemed confused, looking around as if trying to remember where she should go. Madison, without hesitation, approached the woman, her immediate concern taking the place of temporary pain. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you okay? Do you need help?" Madison asked gently, extending her hand to the elderly woman. The woman looked at her with a mixture of relief and confusion. "Oh, my child, I got lost. I can't find my friend's room. He was admitted here, but these hallways all look the same to me," said the woman with a trembling, fragile voice. Madison, even exhausted and emotionally drained, smiled at the elderly woman and gently took her arm. "I'll help you find him, don't worry. We'll find his room." As they walked together down the corridors, Madison realized that even in the midst of her own pain, there was still room to help someone. I guess that's how life is. We always have something to offer, even when it seems we can't give anything more. Along the way, Mrs. Elena, as she introduced herself, began to chat with Madison. thanking her for her kindness. "You're a good girl. Have you been working here long?" she asked, curious to see the uniform Madison was wearing. "Actually, no," Madison replied with a sigh. "I'm here because my children, triplets, are in the neonatal ICU. One of them is in surgery now. They were born very prematurely. It's difficult, but I need to do everything I can to get the money that will keep them all alive. The hospital bills can't accumulate, and I'm alone in this, but I'll do everything so they don't lack anything," she said. Lady Elena paused for a moment, looking deeply into Madison's eyes. "Triplets, you must be going through a storm, and you're here working and helping a lost old woman like me. That says a lot about who you are." There was a glimmer of admiration in the lady's eyes, and for a moment Madison felt embraced by those words. "I have no choice. I have to keep going. If I stop, who will fight for them?" Madison said, her voice heavy with emotion. "They are my life now, but it's so hard. I feel alone," Madison confessed softly. Lady Elena gently squeezed her hand. "Sometimes the hardest paths show us who we really are. Your strength, my child, is what will save your children. Keep going like this, and don't lose hope." Elena's words touched something deep within Madison, and for a moment she allowed herself to feel a little hope. After helping Lady Elena find her friend's room, Madison returned to the ICU. The hours following the surgery were pure tension for Madison. She spent every second in front of the ICU, watching doctors come and go, unable to stop thinking about everything that was at stake. The baby's surgery, a delicate procedure, had been necessary to save his life, but the risks were still enormous. Did they make it? Will my son survive? The thought consumed her, bringing with it a mixture of hope and despair. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the doctor in charge of the surgery appeared in the hallway. Madison's heart raced as he approached. The doctor's face was difficult to read, but there was a calmness in his expression that brought a small spark of relief. "Madison," he began with a firm yet compassionate voice, "the surgery was complicated, but we managed to stabilize your baby. Now he's under observation, and there's still a lot to monitor in the next few hours, but for now, he's out of danger." Madison let out a deep sigh, as if she had been holding her breath for days. The tears welling up in her eyes this time were not of fear, but of immense gratitude. "My baby is alive. He survived." The sense of relief was so great that her legs almost gave way. "I don't even know how to thank you," Madison said, her voice trembling. "Thank you. Thank you for saving my son." The words escaped her mouth between sobs of relief, and she held her trembling hands before her chest as in a prayer. The doctor, with a slight smile on his lips, nodded. "We're doing our best, Madison, but remember that the recovery process will be long. He's still very small, and he'll need intensive care for the next few weeks. He'll be okay. He'll survive. I need to believe that," Madison thought, as she watched the doctor walk away. Her heart was still heavy, but now there was hope, a light at the end of the tunnel. She knew the path would be arduous, but at that moment, knowing that her son had made it through the surgery was enough to renew her strength. Madison sat back down in the ICU chair, looking through the glass. The 3 tiny bodies inside the incubators were her reason for living, and now she felt an even greater determination to keep fighting. "They are strong, and I need to be too," she thought. "Now more than ever, I can't give up." The next morning, after another sleepless night, Madison went to the neonatal ICU to check on the baby's condition. The hours dragged on, and the wait was agonizing. She could barely think of anything other than the surgery and the triplets' critical condition. If only there was something I could do, something other than wait. It was then that one of the hospital nurses called out to her, handing her an envelope. "Madison, this was left for you by a visitor yesterday," she said with a warm smile. "Looks like someone wanted to help you," the nurse explained, leaving Madison surprised and confused. As she opened the envelope with trembling hands, inside she found a considerable amount of money and a simple but touching letter. "Madison, your kindness and strength moved me deeply. Don't let the weight of the world bring you down. Here is a little help for your children. Use it as you see fit. You are stronger than you think. With affection, Lady Elena." Tears welled up in Madison's eyes. She cared about me. She doesn't even know me, but she cared enough to help me. The act of kindness touched Madison's heart deeply, and for the first time in a long time, she felt that she wasn't completely alone. One day I'll pay back every penny. This woman, she doesn't know how important this help was, not for the money, but for the gesture in such a desperate moment. It's good to know that there are still kind-hearted people in the world, she thought. With the money she received, Madison was able to pay part of the medical costs for the baby's surgery, and as she looked at her children through the glass of the ICU, something within her changed. I will keep fighting, no matter what happens. I won't give up on you. The renewed strength she felt seemed to give her a new reason to carry on. Days later, Lady Elena returned to visit Madison at the hospital. The two sat down to chat for a few minutes. "Why did you do that for me?" "You didn't have to," Madison asked, still incredulous at the help she had received. Lady Elena smiled slightly, her eyes mysterious. "I saw something in you, my child, something special, a strength that perhaps you haven't discovered yet. We all need help at some point in our lives. Count on me for whatever you need," she said softly. The words sounded like a lifeline amidst the storm that threatened to engulf Madison. The days that followed the surgery were pure anguish for Madison. She spent hours sitting in front of the ICU glass, watching the tiny bodies of her children struggle to survive. The baby who had undergone surgery was surrounded by even more tubes and machines, and every sound emitted by the machines seemed a constant reminder of how his life hung by a thread. Madison could barely sleep, her mind always fixated on the thought that at any moment something could go wrong. She prayed silently, her tired face reflected in the ICU glass. "Please don't take my children away from me. They've already been through so much. I would give anything to see them grow up." The weight of responsibility seemed to double with every passing minute, but she couldn't allow herself to falter. The doctors and nurses did what they could, and after endless days of waiting, finally a glimmer of hope emerged. "Madison," the doctor said one morning, approaching with a more relaxed demeanor, "the surgery was a success, and your baby is showing signs of recovery. It will be a slow process, but we have reasons to be optimistic now." Madison could hardly believe it. The news made her heart leap with joy, and for the first time in weeks, she felt the air entering her lungs with relief. "Thank God," she murmured, her eyes full of tears. "I knew they were strong. I knew my babies would survive." The faith she had placed in her children was being rewarded, and it gave her strength to keep going. The following days were marked by slow but steady improvement. The three babies, though still fragile, began to gain weight and breathe better with the help of the machines. Each little progress was a victory, and Madison made sure to be there to celebrate everyone. "You are little warriors," she thought, watching them tenderly. "Nothing in this world will take you away from me." Weeks passed, and finally, the day that seemed so distant arrived. Madison could take the babies home. When the nurse brought each of the little ones wrapped in blankets, Madison felt a mixture of happiness and fear. "Can I really do this on my own? How will I take care of three babies at the same time?" Doubt crept into her thoughts, but she knew she had no choice. They were all she had, and she would do anything to ensure they had the best, even if the best was difficult to achieve. As she placed her children in the stroller to leave the hospital, Madison looked at the building that had become her home during those weeks. The feeling of gratitude mixed with anxiety about what was to come. "I managed to bring them this far, but what now?" she thought as she pushed the stroller down the hallway, feeling the lightness of being able to take them home, but also the weight of the responsibilities that were beginning to pile up. When she arrived at the small apartment where she was living, Madison set up the 3 cribs she had managed to get with the help of some donations. The place was cramped, the walls were peeling, but that space was what she could call home. She placed each baby in their respective crib, the tears still present in her eyes, as she saw that finally, they were home. "You made it, my loves. We're together finally." The relief of being home with them soon gave way to a new reality. The demands of the triplets' sleepless nights became frequent. Intermittent crying, waking her up hour after hour. Madison hardly had time to rest. Taking care of 3 newborns required constant attention, and she quickly found herself overwhelmed. "How am I going to do this every day? It's so much," Madison murmured as she changed the diaper of one of the babies and cradled another in her arms at the same time. Exhaustion overwhelmed her, and the fear of not being able to handle everything grew with each passing day, but she refused to give up. "I'll figure it out. They need me, and I'll be strong for them." The phrase had become her mantra, a constant reminder that even in the hardest of times, she had to keep going. It was amidst this chaos that Madison found a letter among the accumulated bills. The envelope bore the seal of the hospital, and her heart raced as she opened it. "What will it be now?" she thought as she tore the paper with trembling fingers. A cold and impersonal notification informed her that the medical costs of the debt with the hospital were already far beyond what she could afford. To make matters worse, the rent for her apartment was overdue, and the landlord had already threatened to evict her. "I can't believe this. How am I going to pay for all of this?" Tears began streaming down her face as she read the last lines of the letter. The threat of eviction was imminent, and the medical debts were frightening. "How am I going to handle all of this? How am I going to keep a roof over my children's heads?" The pressure in her chest grew, and despair began to suffocate her. She had already fought so hard, and now it seemed that all the progress was about to crumble again. Madison held the letter tightly, feeling the texture of the paper crumple under her fingers. "I fought so hard. This can't end like this," she thought, as she looked at her children sleeping peacefully in their cribs. They had fought to survive, and she had promised herself that she would do whatever it took to protect them. But now, with debts mounting, and the threat of losing her home looming over her head, she wondered how she would manage to continue. Quentin was in the main hall of the mansion, observing the frenzy of activities as the crew prepared for the upcoming wedding. He tried to focus on the details, the flowers arranged in impeccable arrangements, the glistening chandeliers that seemed to dazzle the ambiance with their brilliance. However, his mind was distant, enveloped in a strange feeling of discomfort that he couldn't shake off. "Why am I not happy? This should be one of the best moments of my life," he thought, as he saw Claire cross the hall with her clipboard, dispensing orders with the same precision with which she calculated every penny of the ceremony. She stopped in front of a young employee who, in a hurry, was adjusting the tablecloth on one of the tables. "Are you kidding my patience?" Claire fired, her voice cutting and full of impatience. The girl, with trembling hands, tried to answer something but was abruptly interrupted. "I ordered the most expensive silk tablecloths, and you show up with this cheap thing? Do you think this is just any party?" Claire advanced towards the young woman, her face severe, and her eyes full of disdain. The employee stammered, trying to explain that she was following the instructions she had been given. "I don't want to hear excuses. Do your job right or get out of here now," Claire shouted, making the girl shrink in shame. Everyone around stopped for a moment, watching the uncomfortable scene, but soon returned to their tasks, trying to avoid the confrontation. Quentin watched it all in silence, his stomach churning. The way Claire treated the employee struck him in a way he didn't expect. "Why does this bother me so much?" Claire's harsh voice echoed in his mind, and suddenly he was taken back to the moment when he himself had treated someone in a similar way. Madison. He clearly remembered how he despised her, how he pushed her away without caring about her feelings, focused only on his own pride and position. A wave of guilt invaded him. Quentin had always believed he did the right thing in walking away from Madison, thinking she didn't fit into his world. But now, seeing Claire humiliate someone else in the same way, something inside him changed. "I was cruel. And why? Because I thought status was more important?" The thought struck him hard, and he realized there was more than just discomfort in that scene. Claire, still irritated, approached him without noticing Quentin's pensive expression. "These people don't know how to do anything right. I think I'm going to have to review the whole team," she huffed, still clearly annoyed with the young employee. Quentin remained silent for a few seconds before responding, trying to choose his words carefully. "Don't you think you were a little harsh on her?" "Everyone is trying their best, Claire." Maybe it was just a mistake. His voice was calm, but there was a firmness he didn't usually show. Claire looked at him with an expression of disbelief. Harsh? Quentin, this is our wedding. We can't let mistakes like this ruin everything. We're not talking about a small gathering of friends. We're talking about the event of the year. She rolled her eyes as if Quentin's concern was completely absurd. He took a deep breath, feeling the discomfort increase. Event of the year? Is that all that matters to her? He thought, beginning to realize that Claire's view of the wedding was completely different from his. More and more, he saw how she was obsessed with the details and with what others would think, as if the wedding was just an opportunity to display status and wealth. In the days that followed, Quentin couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Claire spoke incessantly about the costs of the ceremony, about how everything had to be perfect to impress the guests. We need to add more exotic flowers, and I've decided to change the buffet to something more sophisticated. Of course, it will cost twice as much, but it will be unforgettable, she said without even looking at him as she made new notes on her clipboard. Quentin began to question whether she really cared about the wedding itself or just the image it would bring. Every conversation seemed to revolve around money, appearances, and how the wedding would benefit them socially. When did we start talking only about money? He wondered. More and more, he could no longer ignore the growing disconnect between them. One night, as they dined in silence, Claire finally broke the quiet, excited about something Quentin still didn't understand. I was talking to the company people today, and guess what? Our wedding is going to bring a big financial deal with one of the family's biggest investors. The wedding will put us on a new level, she said, as if it were the most important news in the world. Quentin froze, the fork still suspended in the air. A financial deal? He looked at her for a few moments, trying to process what he had just heard. The wedding, which he imagined to be a meaningful union, a commitment of love and companionship, now seemed to be just another step for Claire to climb the social and financial ladder. Are you serious? He asked, his voice deeper than he intended. You see our wedding as a financial deal? Claire didn't notice the seriousness in his voice. Of course, this is great for us, Quentin. We're going to strengthen our business ties, and our position in the market is going to improve considerably. Isn't that what all powerful couples do? Her words fell on Quentin like a cold storm. Everything made sense now. The obsession with details, the exorbitant expenses, the need for perfection. She's more concerned with money and image than with what we should be building together, he thought, feeling a wave of sadness take over him. Madison was sitting on the small living room sofa, the triplets finally asleep in makeshift cribs in the corner of the room. She stared at the piles of bills on the coffee table, and the weight of the world seemed to press on her chest with every passing second. Her eyes burned with exhaustion, but sleep was not an option. How am I going to pay the rent, the medical bills? I can't lose this house, not with the babies so fragile. She took deep breaths trying to stay calm, but despair tightened like a noose around her heart. It was at that moment that a loud knock echoed through the house. Madison rose quickly, a sense of dread invading her. She sensed who it was before opening the door. The landlord, a man known for being ruthless and dangerous, had been demanding the overdue rent for days. She slowly opened the door, and there he stood, tall and imposing, with cold, uncaring eyes. "You know why I'm here," said the man, his voice deep and cutting. "The rent is weeks late, Madison. I can't wait any longer." Madison tried to speak, but her voice failed her for a second. "If I explain that I need more time, will he understand?" She knew it was a useless hope, but she had no other. I just need a few more days. The babies are still recovering from the hospital. I can't pay everything right now. I started working at the hospital where they were admitted. I'm saving up the money to pay," she said, her voice trembling as she gripped the door to stay on her feet. The man looked at her with disdain, crossing his arms. "Days? I gave you days. I gave you weeks. And what did you do? Nothing. Tomorrow, either you pay what you owe, or you'll be out on the street with those babies. I'm no longer interested in your excuses," he said ruthlessly, as he pointed inside the house with a look of contempt. This is already more than you can handle. I want the money, or you're out. No negotiations. You should be thanking me for not doing something worse, he said with a veiled tone of threat. Madison felt the ground give way beneath her feet. He wasn't joking. She looked at the triplets who slept unaware of the nightmare about to unfold. I can't let him put us out on the street. Not with them like this. I'd give anything to protect my children, she thought. Feeling tears threatened to fall, but she knew she couldn't show weakness in that moment. I'll get the money, she said, her voice sounding firmer than she expected. Please just give me one more day. I swear I'll sort this out. The man shook his head with a cynical smile. One day. Tomorrow I'll be back. If the money isn't in my hand, you're out. And with those words, he turned and left, leaving Madison alone with the door still ajar, the echo of the pending threat lingering in the air. With nowhere else to go, Madison retreated, observing the grandeur of the decoration around her. While I'm desperate, struggling to survive with my children, he's preparing for a lavish wedding. The thought wounded her from the inside, and the overwhelming reality of her situation made her feel more lost than ever. She left the mansion, but not before etching every detail of the decor into her memory. It's tomorrow, she thought, feeling a huge weight on her chest. I have to do something before it's too late. The next day, the church was lavishly decorated with expensive flowers adorning every corner, delicate lights hanging from the ceiling, and richly dressed guests occupying the pews, eagerly awaiting the start of the ceremony. The atmosphere was the pinnacle of luxury, exactly as Claire had planned, and every detail exuded opulence. Conversations among the guests revolved around business, influence, and the prestige of being present at one of the most talked-about weddings of the year. Everything seems perfect, Quentin thought as he observed the commotion around him. But inside he was far from any sensation of perfection. He was positioned at the altar, impeccably dressed, but the weight on his chest seemed to increase with every minute. Why do I feel this way? This is supposed to be the most important day of my life, and all I can think about is Madison. He felt his hands sweating under the silk gloves, and his mind wandered to the last time he had seen her, remembering the cruel words he had said. Since then, something inside him hadn't been right, and doubt gnawed at his heart. Claire, radiant in her custom-made wedding dress, was by his side, smiling with a confidence that contrasted sharply with Quentin's restlessness. She seemed enchanted by the grandeur of the ceremony, and everything was exactly as she had always dreamed. Finally, we're going to have a party so majestic that it will stop the city. Today is the day everyone will remember forever, she whispered in his ear as the guests took their seats. Quentin nodded, but her words sounded distant to him. Does all that matters to her is the size of the party? The value of things? Did she ever think that this moment was about how we felt about each other? The question kept spinning in his mind, and as he looked at Claire, he wondered when their relationship had become more about image than feeling. The ceremony began. The soft sound of the organ filled the church, and all eyes were on the couple at the altar. Quentin looked ahead, but his mind was elsewhere. Why can't I stop thinking about Madison? What happened to her? Is this marriage a mistake? He thought desperately. When the priest began speaking about the commitment of marriage, the words seemed to echo in Quentin's mind as if they had another meaning. What binds a man and a woman is respect, love, and truth. Respect, love, truth, Quentin thought. He realized that these values were not present in his relationship with Claire, and that tormented him even more. Was he about to unite his life with someone for completely the wrong reasons? In the middle of the ceremony, as the priest spoke about the promises each should make to the other, Quentin heard the distant sound of the church doors opening. He didn't pay attention at first, but the whispers among the guests soon made him turn his face to see what was happening. And then, as if the world around him had stopped for a moment, he saw Madison with 3 babies. She entered the church with the triplets in her arms, her face pale but determined, and her eyes fixed on Quentin. The murmurs among the guests grew louder, all shocked by the sight of the woman entering there with simple clothes that didn't match the setting, without an invitation, and with 3 small babies. The grand and controlled atmosphere of the ceremony was interrupted by that unexpected moment, and for Quentin, time seemed to freeze. What's happening? Who are these children? Why is Madison here? Quentin's heart raced. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, and a mixture of surprise, guilt, and fear overwhelmed him. Memories of the past, of everything he had done to her, of how he had pushed her out of his life, came flooding back like a hurricane, completely destabilizing him. Claire, realizing the growing murmur and seeing Madison standing at the door, looked at Quentin in confusion. "Who is that woman?" she hissed through clenched teeth, trying to maintain her composure, but the irritation was visible in her eyes. "What is she doing here?" Quentin didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was completely focused on Madison, and every step she took toward the altar seemed a silent judgment of his choices. He knew what was coming but had no idea how to deal with it. Madison kept walking, her steps slow but steady. The weight of the triplets in her arms seemed like nothing compared to the emotional burden she carried. The murmuring in the church grew, and some guests were already whispering in disapproving tones. "How dare she show up here? Who is she? Wasn't she his maid?" were the comments Madison heard, but she did not falter. Her eyes were fixed on Quentin, and she knew she could not hesitate. When she finally reached the altar, the entire church was silent. Quentin felt the weight of everyone's gaze, but the only ones that really mattered at that moment were Madison's. "She will never forgive me. I can see it in her eyes. But who are those babies? Could they be—" Madison stopped in front of Quentin, her gaze fixed and unwavering. The triplets slept, oblivious to the tumult around them, and she held them firmly. She found a microphone near the altar and brought it to her lips. "These are your children, Quentin," she said, her voice firm but laced with pain. "You abandoned me, but you cannot ignore what you did. They are yours." The church erupted in murmurs again, and Quentin felt the world crumbling around him. Each word from Madison was like a blow, a reminder of every time he rejected her, treated her as if she didn't matter. And now she was there, revealing her truth before everyone in the midst of the marriage he was about to enter. I'm a father. How? What have I done?" he asked himself, trying to concentrate on what Madison was saying, but his mind was in panic. Madison stood before Quentin, microphone in hand, the sound of her voice reverberating through the church. The guests, previously restless, plunged into a heavy silence. Quentin, his face pale and his gaze fixed on the innocent triplets sleeping in Madison's arms, seemed on the verge of collapse. His mind spun, trying to process everything that was happening. How is this possible? I'm a father? Why is she doing this now? The questions flooded his mind, but he couldn't muster the strength to react. Madison took a deep breath, trying to control the wave of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. She had waited so long for this moment, but now there, with all those eyes on her, the pain was crushing. "I need to be strong for them," she thought, looking at the babies in her arms. "He has to hear the truth. They all have to know." "Quentin," Madison began, her voice trembling but determined, "you can pretend that none of this is real. You can try to run from responsibility, but the truth is that these are your children. They were born prematurely, they almost didn't survive, and all of this happened while you were here preparing to get married and pretending I never existed after treating me like a worthless object." With each word, the weight of her suffering shone through. Quentin looked at her, dazed. Madison's words were like knives cutting his soul. He clearly remembered the day he sent her away, the cruel words he used to push her out of his life as if she were insignificant. "What have I done?" he thought, as the echo of his cruelty reverberated in his mind. "I suffered, Quentin. I was left alone with 3 children to raise. I had to fight for their lives while you lived yours without thinking for a second about what you did to me. You treated me like I was disposable, and I swallowed that pain for a long time. But today, here in front of everyone, I demand that you take responsibility for this. You said I was poor, that we could never be together, and honestly, I agree with you. Today, the only thing I hope from you is that you take responsibility for your children and nothing more. We really are from different worlds, but I'm happy not to be like you. Not to have money, but to have a good heart. This, Quentin, is priceless." Madison paused, her voice strong but her heart heavy with the memory of everything she had to face alone. Claire, who until then had maintained a rigid expression, completely lost control, her eyes wide with rage and disbelief. "What is happening here, Quentin?" she screamed, her shrill voice echoing through the church. "You owe me an explanation. How could you do this? How could you humiliate me like this in front of everyone?" She stood up, her anger evident in every movement, her hands trembling with indignation. Was all of this a lie? This whole marriage, everything we built? Quentin opened his mouth, but he couldn't form a coherent response. His body was paralyzed by the shame and guilt that weighed on him like an impossible burden. He looked at Claire, his eyes begging for understanding, but he knew there was no explanation capable of fixing what was crumbling around him. Madison continued uninterrupted. She knew this was the only moment when everyone would listen to her, and she couldn't waste this chance. "I brought the medical records," she said, raising a folder that was in the bag slung over her shoulder. "Here is the proof that you are the father of these children. You can try to run from the truth, Quentin, but you cannot deny it." She approached the altar, walking towards Quentin with an impressive firmness. The guests, shocked, didn't move. It was as if they were watching a play, unable to look away. Madison handed the folder into Quentin's hands, which he took with trembling fingers. He opened it, and there were the DNA tests, the triplets' medical history, every detail proving his paternity. A test collected with a strand of his hair. Seeing the documents in Quentin's hands, Claire exploded in blind fury. "You used me! This marriage is a sham!" Her voice was laden with hatred, and the guests' gazes now turned to her. Claire trembled with rage, her eyes fixed on Quentin as if he were the personification of all her humiliation. "How could I be so stupid?" she thought, as the anger transformed into an unwavering decision. Quentin, dazed, tried to approach Claire, but she raised her hand, preventing him from speaking. "Don't come near me," she said, her voice icy and cutting. "I'm not a woman who will be humiliated like this publicly by someone like you." "Claire, please, Let me explain," Quentin began, trying desperately to find the right words, but he knew he was losing control of the situation. The truth was there, naked and raw before everyone, and he could no longer hide. "There is no explanation," Claire shouted. "You made me go through this shame, and now, in front of everyone, you exposed me to ridicule." She looked around, seeing the curious and judgmental looks of the guests. This made her make her final decision. With a decisive movement, she tore the engagement ring from her finger and threw it on the floor with disdain. "This marriage is over," Claire declared, her voice firm. "I am not a woman who will stand by a man who does this to the image I fought to build." She turned, her steps echoing through the church as the guests' gazes follow her determined figure to the exit. No one dared say a word. Quentin stood still, the sound of the ring rolling on the floor echoing in his ears like the final sound of everything he had built up until that moment. "I lost everything. Claire, Madison, my children," he thought, despair suffocating him. He looked at the ring on the floor, a symbol of the union he knew he could never recover. The tension in the church was palpable, as if the air had been drained and replaced by a heavy silence. All eyes were fixed on Quentin, Madison, and Claire, who could barely contain her fury. The microphone was still in Madison's hand, but her demeanor was now that of a woman who would not allow herself to be humiliated again, not after everything she had faced alone. "I won't stay silent this time," she thought, feeling the strength growing inside her. Quentin was paralyzed, his gaze fixed on the documents proving his paternity, while Claire suddenly turned, her expression boiling with rage. But it wasn't just anger at the revelation, it was the public humiliation that affected her the most. "So that's it?" Claire began, her voice laden with venomous sarcasm. "This is the woman you chose to ruin our marriage? A maid?" The contempt in her voice was clear, and the use of the word maid came out as if it were an insult, a dirty word. Madison took a deep breath. She knew Claire had despised her from the beginning, knew that in her eyes she was nothing more than someone inferior, but this time she wasn't going to back down. "Yes, I was the maid," Madison said firmly, meeting Claire's gaze. "I cleaned your house, Quentin, every day. But I'm proud to be a working woman, one who struggles every day. Even in my simple job, it also has value. Or don't you need employees? I'm not ashamed of my job. In fact, for me, it's a source of pride." Quentin's eyes widened. Madison's words hit him like a punch in the stomach. He remembered the moments when secretly he felt ashamed to be with her because she was just an employee in his home. And now hearing that, he felt an overwhelming wave of guilt. "I was ashamed of someone who only showed me love. What have I done?" he thought, unable to move. Claire, however, didn't let it go. "Shame? You should look at you," she said, pointing at Madison with disdain. "You're nothing but a desperate woman trying to cling to any crumb Quentin can give you. You came here to my ceremony with those children, to tarnish the most important day of my life. That's pathetic." Madison felt the anger growing inside her. But instead of letting the anger dominate her, she used Claire's words against her. "Pathetic? You know, I used to stay quiet and accept being diminished. I won't do that anymore," she said in a calm but sharp tone. "Pathetic is someone who only cares about status, who is more interested in money and appearance than in love or respect. You think this marriage is the most important day of your life, but it's not for what it should be. You only want what Quentin represents, power, money. But you know what's really pathetic, Claire? I, the maid, am the only person in this church who has ever truly loved Quentin for who he is, not for what he can offer. But I don't want him anymore. Go ahead with the ceremony if you want. I don't care. I just want him to do what needs to be done regarding his obligations as a father." The blow was precise. Claire was left speechless for a moment, her cheeks blushing with anger and shame. She opened her mouth to retort, but Madison's words hit her with such force that all she could do was look at Quentin with a mixture of disgust and frustration. Madison didn't finish. "I'm not going to be humiliated by someone who never knew what it was to work for real. Someone who never had to fight for something that really mattered." She looked directly at Claire and then at Quentin. "I fought for the life of these children, while you, Quentin, abandoned me. You were ashamed of me because I was just a maid. You cared more about what others thought than about what you really felt. And now look where we are. You two are made for each other." The guests remained silent, absorbing every word said by Madison. The discomfort was evident in their looks, and people whispered among themselves. Quentin, dazed, was still trying to process the impact of the words. "I did this. I allowed things to reach this point." Claire, realizing that the attention was now against her, tried to turn the situation around. "You're a bitter woman, Madison, and you'll end up alone with nothing while Quentin and I will still have everything," she said. And Madison laughed, but not with joy, but with exhaustion. "Alone, Claire? I've already been alone. I faced the worst days of my life with no one by my side. But I have something you'll never have. I have my children, and they are my strength. They are all the love, the owners of my heart. And as for you, you can keep the money, the status, because in the end, that's all you have left." Claire lost control. "This ends now," she screamed, ripping the engagement ring off her finger. With a dramatic motion, she threw the ring to the floor, the metallic sound echoing through the church. "I'm not going to marry a man who humiliates me in front of everyone." She looked at Quentin one last time with contempt before turning and leaving the church, the shocked looks of the guests following her. Quentin tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. He stood still, looking at the ring on the floor, feeling the weight of his choices. What have I done with my life? How did I get to this point? He thought, still processing the reality that now lay before him. Claire had left him, but the humiliation wasn't the worst. It was the fact that everything Madison had said was true, and he knew it was too late to go back. Quentin stood for long minutes watching the ring tossed on the floor, the metallic sound still echoing in his mind as a reminder of the disaster that had just happened. The church was now silent, the murmurs of the guests just a distant sound that he could barely process. How did I get to this point? I lost everything. Claire, Madison, my children. The weight of Madison's words still tightened his chest, and for the first time, he began to understand the true extent of his mistakes. Without saying a word, Quentin headed for the church exit, asking Madison to accompany him. He felt the disapproving and judgmental looks of the guests following him. Outside, the cool night breeze hit him, but it did nothing to alleviate the chaos in his mind. Madison, on the other hand, had an unwavering determination. When she saw Quentin approach, her body stiffened, and the hatred she thought she had controlled resurfaced. He stopped a few meters away from her, his eyes tired and full of regret. Is he going to try to apologize? Does he think he can fix everything with empty words? Madison thought, clutching her children to her chest. Madison, Quentin began, his voice low, almost a whisper. I don't even know where to begin. He looked at her, trying to find a shred of empathy in her eyes, but all he found was the same hardness he had caused. I did everything wrong. I was wrong with you, wrong with them. I don't know what I was thinking. Madison interrupted him before he could continue. Quentin, there's nothing you can say that will change what you did. You abandoned me, treated me like I was nothing, and now just because I showed up and ruined your perfect marriage, you want to fix things? Her voice was laden with pain and frustration, and Quentin could feel how hurt she still was. He thinks everything can be solved with an apology, she thought, trying to contain the bitterness growing in her chest. Madison, please, Quentin pleaded, taking a step forward. I don't want you to think that's it. I know I can't erase what I did, but I need to try. I want to be part of my children's lives. I want to make up for what I did to you. I made a mistake, but I can change that now. Let me help. Let me be a father to them. Madison laughed, but there was no joy in her laughter, only pain. Quentin, you have no idea what I went through. I was left homeless, had to find a place in a hurry to live while I was pregnant. But I'm not like you, who judges people and has a heartless heart. You will have every right to see your children, but nothing more than that. Quentin lowered his head, Madison's words hitting him like a truth he didn't want to face. She's right. I've been selfish, only thinking about myself, he thought, shame growing inside him. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, Madison. I know I did everything wrong, but I swear I'm willing to change. I want to be part of the triplets' lives. I want to do what's right for them, he said, making Madison calm down slightly. You'll be part of their life and not mine. Are we understood? If you dare hurt them, if you dare teach your twisted values to my children, you'll see what all the pain you've put me through was capable of causing, she said like a protective mother before turning to walk away, feeling tears well up in her eyes. Hours later, Madison was sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by the triplets' clothes and toys, suitcases scattered around her. Her eyes were fixed on an empty spot on the wall as she folded a small blanket, trying to keep her hands busy so she wouldn't think about the despair she felt inside. I spoke with so much anger not even to have him help us. I didn't explain anything, and now what am I going to do? She thought, feeling the weight of the decision she had made. The fear of being evicted, of being left homeless with her children made her tremble inside, but she knew she couldn't go back. I can't trust him, she mumbled to herself, trying to convince her hurt heart that she had made the right choice. The sound of the doorbell interrupted her thoughts. She paused for a moment, her heart accelerating immediately. It must be the landlord. He must have come back to evict me, she thought, feeling tears stream down her face. The idea of being kicked out at that moment, with the triplets still so young, made her feel like the ground was disappearing from under her feet. Tears began to silently roll down as she wiped her face with the sleeve of her shirt. I was so stupid. I should have asked for the child support he never paid. No, I can't count on that. I had to have made it happen. I had to, she thought, her face wet with tears. With hesitant steps, Madison went to the door, each beat of her heart echoing in her ears. She didn't know what to expect, but she was ready to hear the worst possible news. Upon opening the door, she found Lady Elena on the other side, with a gentle smile and her eyes full of tenderness. "Madison," Lady Elena began, her voice soft but firm, "may I come in?" Madison nodded, unable to speak right away. Lady Elena calmly entered, observing the scattered suitcases around the room, the tired faces of the babies, and Madison's desolate expression. The look on Madison's face told Lady Elena everything she needed to know. She's shattered. She shouldn't be going through this alone, she thought, trying to find the right words. "I know things have been very hard for you, my dear," Lady Elena began, pulling up a chair and sitting calmly, motioning for Madison to sit beside her. "I know what you're going through, and I know you feel like you're alone, but you're not. I'm not going to let you face this alone." Her voice was calm, as if she was trying to soothe a storm. Madison tried to respond, but the words got stuck in her throat. All she could do was hold Lady Elena's hand and let the tears finally fall. "I can't do it anymore. I'm so tired," she thought, the crying coming in silent but deep waves. "I know you've been strong for so long, Madison," Lady Elena continued, squeezing her hand affectionately. "You've been through things that many people wouldn't have survived. Raising 3 children alone with no support, facing abandonment from a man who should have been your partner. That's not easy. But you did it. You did what was necessary to keep your children alive and healthy, and that, my dear, is something no one can take away from you. I know it seems like you didn't manage to pay for everything, but you kept them fed, clothed, and most importantly, loved. You may not have all the money in the world, but you have everything that matters, a good heart." Madison took a deep breath, trying to control her crying, but Lady Elena's words moved her deeply. "She's right. I did what I could. But was it enough?" she thought, feeling the weight of every decision she had made in the past few months. Lady Elena looked at her with eyes full of wisdom and tenderness. "You fought for them, and that's all that matters. And I'm here to tell you that you don't have to fight alone. I know you're afraid that the debts, the rent, all of it seems impossible to solve right now, but I'm here to help you. You and your children don't have to go through this alone anymore." Madison looked at her, surprised. "Lady Elena, I don't know what to say. I can't accept anything else from you. You've already done so much for me," she said, her voice breaking from the effort. "Don't say that, my dear Mrs. Madison," interrupted Mrs. Eleanor, smiling softly. "I'm not offering anything you don't deserve. You've worked so hard, given so much of yourself to keep these babies alive and well. What I'm offering is a chance to have some peace. You and the triplets can come live with me. I have plenty of room, and it will be a relief for me to have company. It won't be a burden. It will be a joy." Madison's eyes widened. "Live with you? But I don't want to impose. You've already done so much for me." "You're not troubling me, Madison," replied Mrs. Eleanor, her voice firm but full of warmth. "You deserve this help, and your children deserve a safe place where they can grow up without this weight on your shoulders. I saw what you went through. I saw how hard you fought, and I think it's time for you to receive some support. We all need help at some point in our lives, and this is your time. I won't take no for an answer." Madison shook her head, trying to absorb the kindness Mrs. Eleanor was offering, but still struggling with the idea of relying on someone. "I don't know how to thank you. I was so lost thinking I'd be evicted today that I didn't even think of another way out. I don't know if I can accept Mrs. Eleanor. I've always been independent, always done things on my own." Mrs. Eleanor smiled and placed her hand on Madison's shoulder. "Being independent doesn't mean you have to carry the weight of the world alone, my dear. Sometimes the greatest strength we can show is accepting help when we need it. Your children need you strong, healthy, and for that, you need rest, support. I see how much you've already done. Now is the time to let someone help you." Madison looked at the triplets, who were sleeping peacefully on the couch, oblivious to the chaos around them. She knew Mrs. Eleanor was right, but accepting help was difficult. "She's right, but what if I fail again?" she thought, still hesitant. "Madison," Mrs. Eleanor continued, her voice firm but affectionate, "I've seen the strength in you since the day I met you. I saw a woman who never gave up, even when everything was against her. I know accepting help is hard, but I want you to know that it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you're thinking of what's best for your children, and that's what makes you an amazing mother." Madison finally let the tears flow freely, but this time, they were not tears of despair, but of relief. "Thank you. I don't even know what to say. I don't know how I could have survived without you," she said, her voice trembling but laden with gratitude. Mrs. Eleanor stood up, pulling Madison into a warm embrace. "You will survive, my dear. You will survive because you are stronger than you imagine, and I will be by your side, along with your children, to make sure of that." The days following Quentin's public humiliation became an unthinkable reality for him. The crumbled marriage, the truth about the children he had abandoned, and the shame etched on the faces of acquaintances and strangers he met became an almost unbearable burden. But for Quentin, the real blow was yet to come, and he knew it as soon as his father entered the mansion's living room for the last time. The tension between them was palpable. Quentin's father, who had always been a controlled and firm figure, was visibly frustrated. He approached his son with heavy steps, his gaze laden with disapproval. Quentin could feel the gravity of the moment. "He's going to punish me for real this time," he thought, fearing what was to come. "Quentin," his father began with a dangerous calm in his voice, "what you did is unacceptable. I did not raise a man who destroys other people's lives and then acts as if nothing happened. You betrayed your responsibility as a son, as a father, and as a human being. I saw everything at the wedding, and I'm ashamed to have to say that you are my son." Quentin lowered his head, the words weighing on his shoulders. He tried to intervene, but his father silenced him with a firm gesture. "I don't want to hear excuses. Words are not enough now," his father continued, his voice growing harsher with every word. "From today on, you have no right to anything. You've lost the mansion, the company, the inheritance. You'll start from scratch. And I hope this teaches you to value what you never cared about." Quentin's eyes widened, surprise and shock etched on his face. "What? Father, you can't do that. I'm your son. I've made mistakes, yes. But to take everything away from me? That's too cruel." "Cruel?" his father replied with a bitter laugh. "Cruel is what you did to Madison, a woman who loved you and whom you threw out on the street without a second thought. Cruel is what you did to your own children, ignoring them as if they were a burden. No, Quentin, I'm just giving you the opportunity to understand what it's like to live like most of the people you've always looked down on." Quentin tried to argue, but he knew he was cornered. "Father, I'll pay child support. I'll do what I must, but don't take everything away from me. How will I survive without anything? No home? No job?" His father shook his head, unrelenting. "You'll find out. From tomorrow on, you'll work at the company, but not as the boss. You'll be a janitor. You'll do the work that Madison did for so long, and that you never valued. You'll clean floors, tidy up the rooms, and you'll feel what it's like to be treated as someone inferior, just as you treated others." The shock washed over Quentin like a wave of ice. "A janitor? Me? Father, please, this will destroy what's left of my dignity," he pleaded, his voice laden with despair. But his father had already decided. "This is the only way for you to learn to value what you've always taken for granted. You'll clean the floors that you so often had others clean. You'll see what it's like to be invisible in the eyes of others. Perhaps then, Quentin, you'll finally understand what it means to be human." The next day, Quentin appeared at the company, but this time without the expensive suit or the air of superiority he always carried. Instead, he wore a janitor's uniform with the name Quentin sewn onto the shirt, a constant reminder of his new reality. He pushed a cleaning cart through the hallways, the eyes of former colleagues and employees following him with disdain or curiosity. Every step he took was a humiliation, every sweeping of the floor a blow to his pride. The employees' voices were muffled, but he knew they were laughing at his downfall. "That was the great Quentin, huh? Look at him now," one of them commented, barely bothering to lower his voice. "I deserve this. This is what I did to Madison," Quentin thought as he pushed the mop across the cold floor. During lunch, Quentin sat alone in the staff room, a small and stuffy space he had never entered before. He could hear the whispers, feel the disdainful looks upon him. This is what Madison felt every day. I never cared, and now I'm the one in this position. The days dragged on like this, each one worse than the previous. Every time he entered to clean a conference room, he remembered how he used to command those meetings. Every time he scrubbed the floor, he saw the reflection of a man who had lost everything because of his arrogance. Will I ever rise again? He thought, scrubbing harder, trying to suppress the feeling of despair. At the end of the shift, Quentin found himself alone in the massive company building he once considered his own. Sitting in a corner of the janitor's closet, he reflected on everything that had happened. The strenuous work was beginning to weigh on his body, but the mental fatigue was what destroyed him the most. I was the boss, and now I'm just a janitor. How did I get to this point? He muttered to himself as the echo of his voice filled the emptiness around him. But deep down, Quentin knew this was only the beginning of the true lesson he needed to learn. He no longer had privileges. He no longer had the protection of money or power. Now he was alone, facing the same disdain he once directed at Madison. The humiliation was constant, and he knew the path to redemption would be long, if there was one. The days of humiliation dragged on for Quentin like a long penance. With each new dawn, he donned the janitor's uniform and went to work, feeling the weight of every wrong decision he had made. What was once a life of privilege and status had now become an exhausting routine laden with disdainful looks and murmurs from former colleagues. I did this to myself, he thought repeatedly, scrubbing the immaculate floors of the company that was once his. But deep in his mind, something bothered him even more than the daily humiliation. Madison. Since the day of the crumbled wedding, he couldn't stop thinking about her and the triplets. What happened to her? Is she okay? Are the babies okay? The questions tormented him, and the guilt gnawed at his soul. Quentin knew he had failed Madison, but now the desire to see her, to at least try to mend part of his life, grew with each passing day. On a particularly quiet afternoon at the company, while cleaning an empty conference room, he made a decision. I need to see her. I need to talk to Madison. He dropped the mop and took his phone out of his pocket, his heart racing. He tried to call her several times, but the calls went unanswered. She doesn't want to hear from me, he thought, a lump forming in his throat. But I need to find her. I need to see my children. Unsure of where she might be, Quentin decided to go to Madison's old address, where he knew she had lived alone with the triplets before being evicted from the house due to late rent. He walked the streets with a heavy heart, the memories of everything he had done becoming heavier with each step. I left her alone with 3 children to take care of. What kind of man am I? Arriving at the modest building where Madison had lived, he climbed the steps with his heart pounding. When he finally knocked on the door, the answer was silence. Quentin tried again, but the house was empty. He looked around, confused. The place seemed abandoned, as if no one had lived there for weeks. She's gone, he thought, despair growing. Where did she go? She can't have just disappeared like that. Quentin asked some neighbors, but no one knew exactly where Madison had gone. Only one elderly neighbor mentioned seeing her leave with the children and some suitcases weeks ago. Maybe she found another place. Maybe she hasn't gone far and is living in the same neighborhood, the man suggested, but the words only increased Quentin's anxiety. He felt helpless. I need to find her, he muttered to himself as he descended the stairs, his mind in turmoil. What if she went away far? What if she never wants to see me again? The questions tortured him, and the reality of not knowing where Madison was crushed him. He stopped on the sidewalk, looking at the empty horizon, feeling the weight of his decisions accumulating on his shoulders. At Lady Eleanor's house, the days passed more lightly for Madison, although she still carried the weight of the difficulties she had faced. The welcoming environment and the loving presence of Eleanor and the triplets brought a new kind of hope. On a quiet afternoon, while the babies were sleeping, Madison decided to do something she hadn't done in a long time: bake a cake. Since she had moved in, she had avoided thinking about little pleasures like that, but she felt she needed to find an escape from all the tension that still resided within her. In the simple kitchen, the sweet familiar aroma of vanilla filled the air, bringing back memories of a more innocent time when worries were smaller and her life had not yet been turned upside down. When the cake came out of the oven, golden and perfect, Eleanor entered the kitchen, drawn by the smell. "My goodness, Madison, this looks wonderful," Eleanor exclaimed with a smile. "You never told me you had this talent for baking." Madison laughed softly. "It's something I used to enjoy doing before, but with everything that happened, I didn't even think about getting back to it." Eleanor took a piece of the cake, and upon tasting it, her eyes widened in surprise. "Madison, this is delicious. You have an amazing talent." Eleanor smiled with admiration, and then something shone in her eyes. "You know, my dear, you should think about opening a bakery." Madison looked at Eleanor, surprised by the idea. A bakery? She hadn't thought about that. After everything she had been through, the idea of starting something new seemed distant, almost impossible. "Can I do it?" she thought, still hesitant. "I don't know, Eleanor. Starting a business is a big step." "Yes, it's a big step, but look at what you've already faced. You've survived so much, Madison. Now is the time to build something for you and your children. This cake is just the beginning. I'm sure that if you invest in this, you'll be very successful." Eleanor placed her hand on Madison's shoulder, encouraging her. "You have the talent, you have the courage. All you're lacking is believing in yourself." Eleanor's words echoed in Madison's mind for days. "Maybe I really can do this," she thought. Reflecting on the possibility of opening her own bakery, Eleanor continued to support her, offering ideas, and within a few weeks, Madison began testing recipes and selling her first cakes. The success was almost immediate, and soon she found herself with more orders than she could handle. Months passed, and Madison's small business flourished impressively. Orders for cakes, pies, and pastries grew every day, and she could hardly believe the direction her life had taken. "I never imagined I'd get here," she murmured to herself as she assembled a cake ordered for a wedding. On a sunny afternoon, Madison received a special order, a cake delivery near Quentin's company. She hesitated for a moment upon hearing the name of the place, but she knew she couldn't turn down an order. "I'm strong now," she thought. "I can get through this." With the cake properly packaged, Madison headed to the delivery location. As she approached the company, her heart began to beat faster, a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. She hadn't seen Quentin since the wedding, and she didn't know what to expect. When she arrived in front of the building, something made her stop. From a distance, she saw a familiar figure. It was Quentin, dressed in a janitor's uniform, cleaning the sidewalk. The shock took over Madison. "He's cleaning the sidewalk of his own company," she thought, incredulous. Seeing Quentin in this position, so different from how she knew him, was an unexpected blow. For a moment she thought about continuing to walk, about ignoring him, but something inside her made her stop. Quentin, upon noticing Madison's presence, dropped the broom and ran towards her. Here is the text with appropriate punctuation added, timestamps removed, original length maintained, and character names made consistent. "Madison, please listen to me." He was visibly shaken, and the humiliation in his eyes was evident. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I need to ask for forgiveness. I need you to understand that I now know what you went through. I finally understood how much I hurt you." Madison remained silent for a moment, observing Quentin carefully. He was no longer the arrogant man who had despised her. Now he was vulnerable, clearly devastated by his own choices. "You really understand, Quentin?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. "Do you understand what it was like to be cast aside as if I were nothing? To raise 3 children alone, without knowing how to feed them, while you lived your life without caring?" Quentin lowered his head, ashamed. "I understand, Madison. Now I understand. Everything that happened to me made me realize how selfish I was. I hurt you in a way I never should have, and I'm not asking you to forgive me right away, but I beg you to let me be part of our children's lives. They deserve to have a father, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be a father to them." Madison took a deep breath, her heart heavy, but now lighter. He finally understands, she thought, feeling that something inside her was about to change. "I won't lie, Quentin," she began, looking him directly in the eyes. "What you did destroyed me, and I will never forget that. But I see that you've changed, and for that, I will forgive you." Quentin raised his head, surprised, his eyes brimming with emotion. You forgive me?" The incredulity in his voice was palpable. "I forgive you, Quentin, but that doesn't mean we'll be together," Madison said firmly. "Don't confuse forgiveness with reconciliation. We've both gone down different paths now. But for our children, I'll allow you to be part of their lives, as long as you continue to act in the right way." Quentin nodded, the gratitude clear on his face. "I promise, Madison. I promise I'll be the father they deserve." With one last look, Madison turned and walked toward the car, feeling that finally, a part of her life had found closure. Quentin stood there, watching her leave, knowing that although they would never be what they once were, he had a second chance with his children. The months that followed Quentin's life reconstruction were full of learning. Now humbler and more grounded, he dedicated himself not only to work, but mainly to being a present father for the triplets. Every day, Quentin became more involved in his children's lives. He devoted himself to them as he had never done before, savoring every moment. The relationship with Madison evolved into a respectful and friendly coexistence. Over time, they both found a way to balance their lives around the children without letting past grievances hinder the future. The triplets' laughter always filled the environments they were in, and both Quentin and Madison were committed to creating a peaceful and caring environment for them. Since Quentin had started to get back on his feet and proved his worth at work with effort and humility, his father, who had initially taken away his privileges, began to see the genuine change in his son. Months after Quentin had been demoted to the position of janitor at the company, his father decided to call him for a talk. "Quentin, I've seen how much you've been striving," he said, his voice laden with sincerity. "You've learned to value what it means to truly work and understand the people around you. And for that, I'm going to give you a second chance at the company." Quentin was surprised, but very grateful. "I've learned, Dad. I now understand what it means to be responsible for more than just yourself," he said, with the humility he had learned these months. His father smiled slightly. "You'll start over in the administrative sector, but you'll have to prove your worth. The company is built on hard work, not status. I hope you get it right this time." With this new position, Quentin dedicated himself to growing again, but this time he did it differently. He began to see work as an opportunity to help others, and not just a ladder to his own success. He still kept a tight schedule, but made sure to always be present for the triplets, making them feel loved and cared for. He took them to the park, to school, and taught them the importance of kindness and respect. Madison, on the other hand, continued her journey of success with the bakery. Her small business grew exponentially, and now with 2 stores, she could barely keep up with the orders. But Madison felt complete. She had transformed her life through her effort and talent, and whenever she looked at the triplets, she knew it was all worth it. And as she devoted herself to work, Mrs. Eleanor remained an unwavering pillar in her life. Eleanor had become a second mother to Madison and a loving grandmother to the triplets, always present, helping with childcare and offering wise advice when needed. Eleanor was instrumental in keeping Madison steady during the most difficult times. On a quiet afternoon, as they were together in the bakery's kitchen, Eleanor watched Madison working on a specially ordered cake for an important event. She was always impressed by Madison's talent, but more than that, she was proud to see her thriving. "I told you, my dear," said Eleanor with a satisfied smile on her face. "You made it. Look at everything you've built. This is all the fruit of your labor, your heart, Madison." With "Here is the text with appropriate punctuation added, timestamps removed, original length maintained, and character names made consistent," Madison, with watery eyes, looked at Eleanor with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Eleanor. From the beginning, you believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. You gave me a home, you gave me support, and you were always by my side. I can't thank you enough." Eleanor, with her years of wisdom, simply smiled. "Life goes in circles, my child, and what you did was through your own effort. I merely did what anyone should do, help those in need. And now look how you've grown. Your children are proud of you, and everyone who knows you sees the strong and determined woman that you are." Madison wiped her eyes, still emotional. "I always promised myself that I'll pay back what you did for me. You gave me so much." "You already have," replied Eleanor, placing her hand over Madison's. "You brought joy to my home, and you all became my beautiful family. You gave your children what many people can't, a home of love, and now you're giving the world sweets that bring happiness to so many people." The triplets, always running around the store, were like little rays of sunshine that lit up every corner they passed through. They had a deep bond with Eleanor, who often took them on walks or told them stories before bedtime. For Eleanor, seeing Madison and her children happy was the greatest reward. And then, one day, a new order arrived at the bakery. Madison received an order to deliver a cake to an event near the company where Quentin worked. Hesitant but determined to move on with her life, she accepted. On the day of the delivery, when she parked near the company, she saw something that paralyzed her for a moment. Quentin was in front of the building, wearing a different uniform, with a focused expression as he organized some tasks. She got out of the car and observed for a few seconds, absorbing the scene. Quentin, who had once flaunted power and arrogance, was now working in an honest and humble way. He didn't seem like the same man. He saw her from afar and, surprised, walked towards her. "Madison," he said with a shy smile, "I didn't know you'd be around here." She smiled back with a mixture of feelings. "I got a cake order for an event nearby. You look different," she said. Quentin nodded, his eyes full of understanding. "I am different. After everything I went through, I learned a lot. I just want to be a good father and keep doing things the right way." Madison looked at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "You have been a good father, Quentin. The boys adore you, and I can see how much you've changed. I'm glad this has happened," she said. The two stood in silence for a moment, observing the small details of the moment. Quentin didn't ask for anything more than that. There were no more excuses, just the acceptance of his responsibilities and the life they now led. At the end of the day, Madison went home and, sitting with Eleanor, reflected on how things had changed. "He finally understood, Eleanor," she said thoughtfully. "And that's all that matters, my dear. Sometimes the path to understanding is the longest, but the important thing is that he got there." Gradually, life adjusted to this new normality. Madison continued to expand her bakery. Eleanor remained by her side, and Quentin continued to be a present and dedicated father. Although their lives would never again be romantically intertwined, they had found a way to live in harmony, united by the love they shared for their children. And so, as the sun slowly set on the horizon, tinting the sky with shades of orange and pink, the triplets ran carefree through the backyard, their laughter echoing in the air like little symphonies of joy. The soft grass beneath their feet, the gentle wind caressing their faces. It was a simple moment but filled with meaning for Quentin and Madison, who watched from a distance. For the two of them, seeing their children playing and free from worries was the greatest reward after everything they had been through. Madison, sitting in a rocking chair on Eleanor's porch, felt an inner peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. She watched the boys with a tranquil smile, her mind floating between memories of the past and satisfaction with the present. "We made it," she thought as she rocked gently, the rhythmic sound of the chair almost like a background beat to the children's laughter. "Against all odds, against all the pain and humiliation, I managed to give them the life they deserve." She knew her journey to that point hadn't been easy, but every obstacle, every tear, every sleepless night caring for the triplets had been worth it. It was difficult, but it was necessary, she reflected, finally feeling at peace with the choices she had made. Madison was no longer the woman who had been humiliated and abandoned. She was now a strong mother, a successful businesswoman, someone who had risen up and built a new life for herself and her children. On the other side of the yard, Quentin watched the boys as they ran. Each of their laughs seemed to fill the void he had felt for so long. Now, with a more mature and distant look from the arrogance of his past, he could understand the value of these small moments. He was no longer the man he had been, the one who cared only about status and wealth. He had learned through humility and hardship that the true value of life was there, in simplicity, in the unconditional love his children had for him, and in the respect he had finally regained from Madison. I was so blind, Quentin thought, reflecting on the choices that had led him to lose everything. But now, seeing the triplets smiling at him, as if all he needed to be was a present father, he understood the true meaning of his journey. It no longer matters what I lost, but what I gained, he murmured to himself, his eyes welling up. There was no more pain in his heart, only gratitude for having gotten a second chance to be a better father, to be part of his children's lives, and to have Madison's trust to keep moving forward. The two exchanged a glance from a distance, not as lovers or partners, but as parents who had finally found the necessary balance to give their children the best. There were no longer any hard feelings between them, only a mutual understanding and an acceptance that, despite everything, they had both grown and changed for the better. Eleanor, who was watching the scene from inside the house, smiled to herself. Everything turned out all right in the end, she thought, satisfied. She knew that both Quentin and Madison still had a lot to learn, but the path they were now walking was much lighter than the one they had left behind. She, with her wisdom, had guided Madison through difficult times, and now, observing this new dynamic between the two of them, she was certain that the future for both them and the triplets would be promising. The sky continued to change color, gradually darkening as the first stars appeared. The children, still full of energy, ran around the house, happy, unaware that their lives had been shaped by so many struggles that were now finally overcome. For Madison and Quentin, there was no longer a need to talk about the past. The scars were there, yes, but they were the scars that had made them stronger. They had survived, changed, and most importantly, found their own places of peace. As the day finally drew to a close and the stars took over the sky, Madison took one last look at the triplets before calling them for dinner. They are safe, happy, and that's all that matters now, she thought, content with the life she had rebuilt for herself and for them. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to continue bringing exciting stories almost every day. Don't miss the next amazing narrative that's about to appear on your screen. We are immensely grateful to have you here with us. Now you can click on the links that are appearing on the screen right now. We have a special selection just for you, filled with valuable stories and guaranteed entertainment. See you there.